So some of you have actually utilized the quadratic formula when we were factoring before in prior lessons. So today I'm going to show you how to do it, why we do it, and we're going to do a few practice problems. You're going to do some on your own, and then you're going to have an option of one of 3 questions to complete for homework. So this is posted on Wednesday. It'll be due Friday by midnight. Okay. Well, Thursday by midnight. Thursday by midnight. All right. So the do now for this, again, this is the completed version, but we're going to go through it. You do have problems to do, but they're here for you as a guide. So, I mean, you can copy it or you can try it on your own. The do now is completing the square process. I'm going to leave, this is going to be here for you. I'm not going to talk through it. I want to get to like the main content so that you're not listening to my voice for too long. But here's the process for completing the square. You might need it later. Remember, b divided by 2. Factor out first. Look back at the notes for this. Remember, you want the opposite when it's an expression, when it's in the red. Okay. All right, so the quadratic formula first before we even talk about this. So again, we're still on quadratics. We're factoring. We're finding the solutions, the roots, the zeros, the x-intercepts, whatever you want to call them, right, where that U shape hits the x-axis. And I wish I put up GeoGebra when we first did it. But if you don't have a graphing calculator at home, this is one that you can use. So if I give you a quadratic here, y equals 2x squared, I don't know, plus 4x plus 16. No, too big. Plus 1. Okay, so here, this is where we're solving for, right? The roots are not as nice. And that's why we did the radicals practice, because sometimes our roots aren't, perfect numbers. It's not sitting on -2, 0 or 0, 0. It's this long decimal, which when we solve it out, we're probably gonna leave it as a radical, right? The square root of 5 or the square root of like 11 is not a nice number. It's a long decimal. So that's why we practice simplifying radicals so that we don't get these ugly looking decimal answers. But these can be answers, right? They don't always have to be a whole number or integer. So the reason we use quadratic formula, again, it's another factoring tool. And I'm reading here. So often the simplest way to solve ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0 for the value of x is to factor the quadratic, set each factor equal to 0 like we've done, right? And then solve each factor. But sometimes the quadratic is too messy or it doesn't factor at all. Or you just don't feel like factoring. So this is a method that will always work. You will always be successful if you do it right. God forbid you forget other factoring, you can use this one. God forbid you forget this one, you may have to remember the other ones, right? So these are all ways to factor. This one will work no matter what. As long as your quadratic is in standard form, you're able to do this. And again, this is something you need to memorize. If you were taking the Regents, it wouldn't be on the Regents. It's a good question. Would it be on the Regents? Let's look it up. Algebra 1. Not that you're taking it, but I want to see if it actually, I have it hanging in the classroom, but I'm not in the classroom. Oh, they do give it, so you wouldn't have to memorize it. It's right here, okay? And I can post this too if you guys need this, but you can always Google it. So we're going to practice using it. It's pretty self-explanatory. This crazy looking thing just explains like where it came from and like the process, but you do not need to memorize that. You just need to know that the equation is -b plus or minus this one here, right here. The square root of b squared minus 4ac over 2a, okay? So we're going to do 2 together. So I'm not talking for too long. You have to listen to me. If you don't want to listen to me go through it, you might just know how to do it from your experience. You can, I'll just explain them the rest of what I'm doing so that you don't have to keep listening to this video. So I'm going to do 2 of these with you. I'm going to do these 2 on together. You guys for homework are going to do this problem, 2p squared plus 8p equals 7. And again, the answer is here, so you can copy it or you can try doing your own. You're also going to do this one for homework, and then you're gonna pick two of these. You're gonna pick let me see. Should I do you're gonna do one of these. You're gonna do one of these for me, but you're going to solve the equation using a different method for each. Oh. You're gonna do all three. You know what? I'm gonna make you all do all three. You're gonna do all three, but you're gonna solve a different method for each. So you can do factoring, you can solve by completing the square, you can use the quadratic formula, you can do the AC method. So you're going to tell me what method you're using, and then you're going to find the x values. So maybe for, this second problem, if you want to do quadratic formula for all of them, you can. If you want to do factoring, if you can do completing the square for all of them, you can. Just tell me the method and, what you think is easier and, why you chose that. Did you look at it and say, oh, I know two numbers that make -5 and two numbers that add to 3. It's perfect to use the AC method. Or you looked at it and you said, there's only a factor. I don't remember completing the square. I'm going to just use quadratic formula, whatever you want to do. Okay. So you can stop the video here if you don't want to listen to me go through the we do problems for quadratic formula, but I'm going to do that now. Okay. All right. So I'm going to do, so again, we want this looking in standard form first. Our quadratic formula, if you want to write it down on your paper, is -b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac, which this is multiplication right here, divided by 2 times a. Okay, again, this helps us find the x, which is the roots or the solutions or the zeros of the quadratic where it crosses the x-axis. And you guys should know the letters, right? This is a, b, and c. That's why we need it in the standard form in order for us to know exactly what those a, b, and c values are. So let's start first with this problem, which is like the do now problem. We're going to do the quadratic formula way. So I'm going to write my formula, 2x squared plus 4x equals 16. Okay. All right. So again, we want it in standard form. So I need to move this over to this side, to the left, using inverse operations, and I have it equal to 0. So I'm good to go. So now I'm going to use my formula of -b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac over 2a. Okay, and all I'm going to do is plug it in. What you should do first is list your things. So a is 2, a is the first value, b is 4, +4, and c, careful, is -16. Right, you take that value in front. All right, so now I'm going to plug these into my formula using the values above. So -b would be -4 plus or minus. Remember, when you take the square root of something, you could have a plus or minus answer, so that's why it's in that equation. The square root of b squared, which is 4 squared, minus 4ac, so -4 times 2, which is a, times c, which is -16. I can't fit it. That was my mistake. And then all divided by 2 times a, which is 2 times 2. Okay, and now we're going to simplify. So hopefully you have that all written down. And you can pause it, obviously. But I'm going to write it down here. So let's do, we have -4 plus or minus, and I'm just going to simplify the inside a little. So 4 squared is 16 minus 4 times 2 times -16. So I'm over here. So 4 times 2 is 8. 8 times -16 is -128, but we're subtracting it. So it's actually going to be +128. right? We have a minus 4 times 2, which is a minus 8 times a negative 16. So negative 8 times negative 16 is a positive 128. And then this whole thing is going to be divided by 4. Okay, and we're going to keep simplifying. We can add these inside. So if we add 128 plus 16, we get 144 inside of there. So I'm going to go to this side. So we get negative 4 plus or minus square root of 144 divided by 4. So all I did was simplify the inside. 16 plus 128 is the square root of 144. Brought all the other terms. This is really nice. Why is it really nice, you think? And why did I teach you to simplify radicals? Because the square root of 144 is a perfect square. So this is a perfect square. We can take the square root of it. It's just going to be 12. So this is going to turn into, so now this makes us, our answer is nice. We have negative 4 plus or minus 12 over 4. Now what I want you to do with this answer is separate it. You have negative 4 plus 12 divided by 4. And you have negative 4 minus 12 divided by 4. So please do both answers. If it does work out nicely with the radical, like a radical was just a perfect square, make it look like a nice answer. So we have negative 4 plus 12 is 8 over 4, which is going to get us x equals 2, right? 8 divided by 4. And then if we do this, we get negative 4 minus 12 is negative 16 divided by 4. And x will then equal negative 4. Okay, so here are our two solutions for this answer. Again, how could you check your answer? You plug it in. You plug it in back to the original. You have an x equals 2 and x equals negative 4. You plug it back into here. You can, and if the left side equals 16, left side 16 equals 16, then you know you did it right, okay? You can always do that with your work. All right, let's try the other we do problem that I'm going to do with you. It's this one. So we have 1/2 r squared minus 6r equals 2. So this is the original. We're going to do it together. And then for homework, you're going to show me the next two. And those three at the bottom. Okay. All right, so we're going to do this one together. So again, I want it looking in standard form. Right now, I only have ax squared and the bx on the left. I want the c, so I'm going to subtract 2 from both sides to make it equal to 0. That's my standard form. Okay, let's list my numbers. So a is 1/2. You can also use 0.5 if you want, so you don't have to use fractions. B is negative 6, right? It's in front of r. And C is negative 2. Okay, now I'm going to plug it into my formula. So my formula number is x equals negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac over 2a. I feel like there's a song to remember this. I don't know the song. I was just really good at like memorizing things in high school. All right, so now we're going to plug our values in. So we have negative b. Careful, the b is already negative though. So if it's a negative 6, I'll just leave it full out and then I'll simplify it after. Plus or minus the square root of b squared, so negative 6 squared, minus 4 times 0.5, which is a half, right? Times our c value, which is negative 2, divided by 2 times a, which is 0.5. Okay, so now I'm going to simplify this a little bit. So now I have x equals negative 6 is a positive 6 plus or minus Negative 6 squared is 36. So square root of 36 minus, so then I have 4 times a half, or half of 4 is 2, times negative 2. So we have minus a negative 4, which is going to be a plus 4, divided by 2 times a half, which is just over 1. Okay, so you don't have to really put the over 1. Now we kind of just have this answer here, and I'll go to the next slide. So again, when I did 4 times a half times the negative 2, I get a negative 4. But since we're subtracting here, remember you're subtracting, it's going to turn positive. So we have 36 plus 4. And a negative squared is always a positive. If you're putting in your calculator, you got to make sure it's around parentheses. That's why I put parentheses when I substitute the numbers in. So, okay, so on the next page, I'll show you. So x equals 6 plus or minus the square root of 36 plus 4. We get 6 plus or minus the square root of 40. So you could see your answer like this, but the reason why we practice simplifying radicals is because this can be simplified. So if you think back to our perfect squares, we have 1, 4, 9, 16, 25, 36. Okay. See if one of these can go into 40 when you multiply, right? So this one, radical 4, this can be broken down to radical 4, radical 10. Radical 10 is not a perfect square, cannot be simplified into any perfect squares. The only numbers that multiply to 10 are 5 and 2, and 5 and 2 cannot be simplified, so we're going to leave radical 10. This simplifies to 2. So your final answer will look like 6 plus or minus 2 radical 10. So, if you were taking the Regents, or if you do have like a final for this class, you may not see this as your answer. So that's why you need to know how to simplify radicals. So that would be your answer. And those are your 2 solutions. And you could separate them for me if you want into plus and minus. But you should know that there are 2 solutions. The quadratic will cross at 6 plus 2 radical 10 and 6 minus 2 radical 10, whatever that is, as a decimal on the graph. Okay? So for your homework, you are going to do this problem on page 6. And you're going to do this problem on page 5. So page 5 and 6 you're going to do for me, and I'll write them out. And then you're going to do page 7. You're going to tell me the method. Try to change them up. I want to see like what you guys know from what we've been learning. You remember you have 2 days to do this. Tell me the method, why you picked the method, and then solve it out, factoring, find the solutions. Okay? Yay! Feel Good Friday is almost here. Let's see if I know how to stop the video.